This is the story of Tasha and Ethan, two souls from different worlds colliding in one impossible moment. Don't skip, because the ending isn't what you think. Tasha Green was one of them. She lived in the kind of neighborhood that doesn't make it on postcards: cracked sidewalks, corner stores with flickering lights, and the sound of sirens that didn't scare anyone anymore. Her world smelled like bleach, bus fumes, and burnt coffee. Every morning before the sun came up, she tied her hair with the same red scarf her mama used to wear and caught the 445 to Midtown. She was a cleaner, one of those invisible people who make the world look like it's not falling apart. The kind of job nobody thanks you for, but everybody depends on. Her life ran on autopilot: 2 shifts, 1 daughter to raise, and just enough faith to keep breathing. She'd whisper a prayer on the bus. Asterisk, God, just don't let today break me. Asterisk. But life had already broken her in quiet ways. Her husband, Marcus, had left 3 years back, chasing a business opportunity that turned out to be another woman. Her daughter, Nia, was 10 now, smart, mouthy, with a smile that reminded Tasha too much of her younger self. At night, when she'd finally sit down, she'd count tips and loose bills, the little pile that was supposed to save her from everything. Rent, groceries, hope. But hope costs more than groceries do. One Tuesday morning, her supervisor called her over. "Green, you ever been to the Caldwell Tower?" "No, sir," she said, pulling off her gloves. "Good. You're on that rotation now. New client, rich one. Don't mess this up." She didn't even look up the name. She cleaned enough high-rises to know the type. Marble floors, cold air, no smiles. But when she stepped into the lobby that Friday morning, something in her chest tightened. The glass walls stretched higher than her imagination, and her reflection stared back at her from every direction, like the building was reminding her how small she was. The elevator ride took forever. Each floor she passed, the air felt different, lighter, quieter, more expensive. By the time she reached the 70th floor, she could see half of Atlanta beneath her. People looked like ants, cars like toys. She thought, asterisk, so this is what it feels like to be above it all. Asterisk. The penthouse door opened before she could knock. A tall man in a gray sweater stood there, barefoot, expression unreadable. He looked at her, then at the cart of cleaning supplies. "You must be Tasha, the cleaner." He stepped aside without another word. The silence inside was unreal, the kind that has its own sound. It smelled like money and loneliness. She started her work quietly, wiping glass, polishing steel, picking up after someone who seemed too rich to touch his own life. But as she moved through the rooms, she noticed something strange. No photos, no laughter, no signs of anyone actually living there. Only that man, the billionaire, pacing near the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. And in that moment, something inside her whispered, asterisk, he looks lonelier than you. Asterisk. She brushed the thought away, packed up her things, and left before he could say another word. But when she got home that night and told Nia about the castle in the sky, her daughter asked, "You think they even notice you up there, Mama?" Tasha smiled a little, but her eyes didn't. "No, baby. People like that don't see people like us." If only she knew how wrong she was. They called him Ethan Caldwell, the man who built half of Atlanta's skyline before turning 35. But money can't build peace. And for all that glass and steel around him, he was still living in a cage. Ethan's life looked perfect from the outside. Forbes covers, charity galas, private jets. But behind the press photos and million-dollar smiles, he was just another man running from something he couldn't name. He'd inherited his father's empire after the old man's sudden heart attack. The same father who taught him that feelings are for the poor. So Ethan did what he was raised to do. He built, he bought, he conquered. And when that didn't fill the hole, he worked harder. His penthouse was his fortress, a 10,000 square foot museum of silence. Every object had a purpose, but nothing had meaning. The fridge was full, but untouched. The piano in the corner hadn't been played since his mother's funeral. And the man himself? He hadn't smiled for real in years. He worked from home, slept irregularly, and avoided people unless they were selling him something. He had assistants, chefs, drivers, advisors, but not one friend he could call at 2 a.m. Sometimes late at night, he'd stand by the window with a glass of whiskey, looking down at the city lights. He'd tell himself he liked the view, the control, the power. But deep down, he knew the truth. He wasn't looking at the city. He was looking for something. The first time he noticed her, really noticed her, she was on her knees, scrubbing the marble by the kitchen island. Head down, quiet, efficient. Different from a usual staff, who always looked like they wanted something from him. She didn't even look at him. And for some reason, that unsettled him. He'd been invisible to women who pretended to adore him for years. Models, influencers, socialites. All of them smiling for the wrong reasons. But here was this woman, this cleaner, who didn't care who he was. Didn't ask. Didn't flatter. Didn't even look impressed. He watched her for a few seconds too long before she looked up, catching his eyes for half a heartbeat. Something flickered there. Not fear, not desire. Just presence. Then she looked away, back to work, and that was that. For the rest of the day, he couldn't focus. He had meetings scheduled, calls to take, deals to approve, all of it blurred. He kept seeing her red scarf in the reflection of the glass walls. Later, he caught himself wondering if she'd come back next week. He didn't like that. He wasn't used to wondering about anyone. That night, his friend and business partner, Greg Sloan, called. "You sound off, man. Everything good?" "Yeah," Ethan said. "Just tired." "You? Tired? That's a first. You should take a vacation." "Yeah, maybe." But when the call ended, Ethan didn't book a flight or pour another drink. He just sat there, in silence, staring at the small, faint smudge on the marble where she'd been cleaning earlier. For the first time in years, he felt something move in him. Not attraction, not lust, something quieter. Curiosity. And curiosity can be dangerous for a man who's never learned how to feel. Sometimes the smallest mistake can change everything. A coffee spill, a heartbeat, a moment you can't take back. That morning, the rain was steady, not hard, just enough to blur the city into gray watercolor. Tasha had barely slept. Her daughter had a fever the night before, and the medicine money came out of next week's grocery budget. Still, she showed up early, red scarf tucked under her cap, same quiet determination in her step. She didn't expect him to be home. He usually wasn't. But when the elevator doors opened, she saw him, Ethan, sitting at the kitchen island, laptop open, sleeves rolled up. He looked different, less put together. There were dark circles under his eyes and an untouched cup of coffee beside him. "Morning," she said softly. He looked up, surprised she'd spoken first. "Morning," he echoed. Then, after a pause, "You can start wherever you need to." That was the longest sentence he'd said to her. She nodded, started wiping down the counter beside him. Everything was quiet except for the rain against the glass and the soft rhythm of her cloth moving across the marble. Then it happened. Her elbow hit the edge of the coffee cup. The mug slid, spun once, and tipped, dark liquid spilling like slow motion across the white counter, dripping down onto his laptop, his papers, the floor. For a second, the world froze. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she stammered, grabbing a towel, heart racing. "I'll clean it up, But Ethan didn't yell, didn't move. He just stared at the spreading stain. Then, quietly, "It's okay." She blinked, still panicking. "No, it's not, sir. I can fix it." He reached over, gently taking the towel from her hand. "Tasha, right?" he asked. She hesitated. "Yes, sir." He nodded slowly. "Sit down." That stopped her cold. "Sir, I'm not supposed to." "Please," he said, voice low but steady. "Just sit for a second." She sat, reluctantly, awkwardly, on the far edge of one of his immaculate white stools. He looked at the coffee dripping onto the marble. "You know," he said quietly, "my mother used to spill her coffee every morning. Drove my father insane." Tasha looked up, unsure if he was joking. He wasn't smiling. He used to say, "You can't start a day right if you start it with a mess." She'd laugh, tell him the mess meant she was alive. Tasha didn't know what to say. She just watched him, this man who had everything, speaking like someone remembering a ghost. Finally, she said, maybe she was right. He looked at her, really looked this time. And for a moment the distance between Penthouse and bus stop disappeared. They talked. Not long, not deep, just small things. Where she was from. Why work so much? He told her he couldn't sleep when things were quiet. She told him silence was the only thing that made her feel safe. It was 10 minutes. Maybe less. But it changed something. When she left that day, she felt his eyes following her to the door. Not in the way men usually look, but like he was trying to remember something he'd forgotten long ago. And for Ethan, that coffee stain stayed there all day, even after she'd wiped it clean. He could still see the faint ring on the marble, a small imperfection that made everything feel strangely alive. He didn't know it yet, but that mess had just rewritten his whole life. What started as an accident became a rhythm. Quiet conversations between two lonely people who weren't supposed to meet. After that morning, something shifted. Ethan started working from home more often. Tasha told herself it was coincidence. Rich people had strange schedules, but every Friday, he'd be there, waiting. It wasn't planned. It wasn't flirtation. It was recognition. Their talks began in fragments. Weather, traffic, the strange things people do when they have too much or too little. He'd ask small questions about her daughter, about her church, about what she wanted if she could have anything. She never asked for money, never even hinted. All she said was, "I just want to stop surviving long enough to live." Those words stayed with him. In return, he told her things he hadn't said to anyone in years. About his mother's piano, covered in dust. About how every night he fell asleep to the sound of the city because silence reminded him of death. It was strange, a billionaire opening up to a cleaner, but in those moments they weren't roles. They were just two people who understood what it felt like to be tired of pretending. One evening, she found him sitting on the floor, surrounded by old photographs. He looked up, almost embarrassed. "You ever feel like you're just a mistake that made money?" he said quietly. Tasha knelt beside him, careful not to touch anything. "I think we all feel like mistakes sometimes," she said. "But God don't make junk." He laughed, the kind of laugh that sounds like it hurts coming out. It was the first real laugh she'd heard from him. After that, she stopped clocking her hours so strictly. She'd stay a few minutes longer, talking while she wiped the last bit of dust off a picture frame or arranged fresh flowers in a vase he never noticed before. Sometimes he'd make her tea. Once, he even cooked, or tried to. Word got around among the cleaning staff. They whispered when she passed, throwing glances she pretended not to see. "Girl, you better be careful," one said. "You know how men like that play." Tasha brushed it off, but at night it echoed. She wasn't naive. She'd seen how power turns kindness into control. But Ethan never crossed that line. Not once. Still, something was growing between them. Not romance yet, not love, but something alive. Something neither of them could define without ruining it. Then one Friday, as she was leaving, he stopped her by the door. "Tasha," he said. She turned. "Yeah." He hesitated, the words catching somewhere between gratitude and fear. "I don't know why, but when you're here, this place doesn't feel so empty." She didn't know what to do with that. So she just smiled, small, shy, real, and said, "Maybe that's 'cause you finally letting some life in." And then she left, heart pounding, unsure if she just crossed a line or saved a soul. Outside, the city was glowing, rain still falling. She didn't notice the man across the street, camera hanging from his neck, watching her walk out of the tower and into the storm. He raised the lens. Click. And just like that, their quiet secrets stopped being theirs alone. Some secrets are too quiet for too long. The world has a way of finding noise. It started with a headline. A blurry photo on a gossip site. Mystery woman spotted leaving Ethan Caldwell's penthouse. Late night visit. At first, Tasha didn't even know about it. She was halfway through her shift at another office downtown when her phone started buzzing nonstop. Missed calls, texts. Her cousin sent the link first, followed by a line of crying, laughing emojis. She clicked it, and there it was, her face, caught mid-step in the rain, red scarf and all. Her chest tightened. The comments were worse than the picture. Asterisk gold digger. Asterisk. Asterisk experiment. Asterisk. Asterisk he's slumming it. Asterisk. Asterisk. She better get that bag before he wakes up. Asterisk. She stood there, mop in hand, as her world tilted sideways. That afternoon, she didn't go back to the tower. Didn't answer the phone when her supervisor called. She just went home, shut the blinds, and cried until Nia came in asking why dinner wasn't ready. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Ethan's world was exploding too, but in a different way. His phone buzzed with messages from his PR team, his board members, Greg. They all said the same thing. Handle it. Now. Greg came to the Penthouse that night, tie loosened, voice sharp. You realize what this looks like, right? It's not what it looks like. They make it not look like it. She's not your friend, Ethan. She's your liability. Ethan's jaw clenched. She's a person. Greg scoffed. You think the shareholders care about that? They didn't. Within hours, the tabloids had dug up her life, her job, her neighborhood, her church, even her daughter's name. They twisted every detail into a narrative that sold better than truth. When Tasha turned on the TV the next morning, she saw herself on the news. Not as Tasha Green, just Asterisk the cleaner. Asterisk, a prop in someone else's story. By the time Ethan showed up at her apartment complex that evening, she was already outside, waiting. The moment his black car pulled up, every window on the block lit up. He stepped out, looking out of place among the cracked sidewalks and peeling paint. She crossed her arms, trembling, not from fear, from anger. You shouldn't have come here, she said. I just wanted to see if you're okay. You mean damage control? No, I mean you. Her eyes softened for half a second before she turned away. You don't get it. You'll move on. I gotta live here. The sound of distant laughter echoed from the corner, teenagers yelling. Hey, that's the billionaire's girl. She flinched. He wanted to reach for her, to say something that could fix it all. But there's no PR statement for pain. No apology rich enough to undo shame. So he just stood there, drenched in the same kind of rain that brought her into his life in the first place. I'll fix this, he said quietly. No, she replied. You'll just make it worse. She turned and walked back inside, leaving him there in the rain, finally realizing what his money couldn't buy: silence or forgiveness. That night, neither of them slept. Ethan stared at the city lights again, the same view, but now it felt like the whole world was watching him back. And Tasha. She stayed awake listening to Nia breathe, praying for peace she no longer believed in. The world had finally noticed her, but not for the reasons she'd prayed for. When the world starts talking about you, you only got two choices: hide or fight back. But love, real love, doesn't survive either for long. Ethan's penthouse turned into a war room. Every morning, his team arrived with new headlines, new angles, new threats to his brand. They spoke in numbers, charts, risk percentages, like Tasha was a PR incident, not a person. Greg was the loudest voice in the room. You need to issue a statement. Something clean, controlled. Make it clear there's no relationship. Ethan just sat there, jaw tight, eyes burning holes into the table. She doesn't deserve that. Ethan, you don't get it. She's destroying you. She didn't ask for any of this. Exactly. Which is why you need to make her disappear. The words hung heavy in the air. That night, Ethan stood on his balcony again. Same skyline, same silence, but it didn't comfort him anymore. He thought about Tasha's voice, the way she used to hum softly while cleaning, the way she listened without judgment. She was the only person who didn't want anything from him. And now, everyone wanted him to erase her. Across town, Tasha's world was collapsing too. Her boss told her not to come back. Too much attention. At church, people whispered behind her back. Even her mother, who always told her to be strong, finally said the words that broke her. Baby, that man's not your world. You were born in this one. Come home. Tasha wanted to. She wanted to pretend none of it happened. But every time she looked at her daughter, she knew she couldn't teach Nia to run from truth. So, when Ethan called again, she answered once. Tasha, let me fix this. You can't fix something you don't understand. Then help me understand. You think this is about you? About your image? This is my life, Ethan. My name, my child, my church. I'm going to hide behind glass. There was silence on the line. Then Ethan whispered, What do I do? Her voice cracked, quiet and final. You make a choice. Me or the world that built you. And then she hung up. For 2 days, Ethan didn't speak to anyone. He ignored calls, canceled meetings, until Greg showed up again with a statement already written. Sign this, Ethan. It's the only way to stop the bleeding. Ethan took the paper, read the words. Mess. Green was a temporary personal companion hired during Mr. Caldwell's recovery period. His hands trembled. Every line reduced her to a rumor, a prop, a mistake. He looked up at Greg. If I sign this, I lose her. If you don't, you lose everything else. And for the first time, Ethan realized maybe those were the same thing. He signed. That night, the statement went public. Within hours, the media called it closure. Investors calmed down. His name stopped trending. But across town, in a small apartment where the wallpaper peeled, Tasha read the headline. And the last piece of her heart broke quietly. Temporary companion. Like she was disposable. Like she was never real. She turned off her phone, packed a single suitcase, and left a note for her mother. No tears. No would-be. Just 5 words. Asterisk, tell Nia I'll be back. Asterisk. Betrayal don't always come loud. Sometimes it comes dressed in silence. In a statement you never wrote. Signed by the man who said he'd never hurt you. Tasha disappeared. No one knew where she went. Not her mother, not her cousin, not the few friends who still picked up her calls. Her apartment sat quiet, blinds drawn, the walls still carrying echoes of her voice reading bedtime stories to Nia. Her mother took the girl in, and when Nia asked, Asterisk, where's Mama? Asterisk, she just said, Asterisk, somewhere safe. Asterisk, but even she didn't believe it. Ethan tried calling for days. Her phone was disconnected. He sent messages that came back undelivered. Every time he walked into his penthouse, it felt emptier, colder, like even the city had stopped breathing with him. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. The silence was louder than the tabloids ever were. Greg came by again, dropping another stack of papers on his desk. Crisis averted, he said. You're free. Ethan didn't even look up. You call this freedom? Greg shrugged. She's gone. The world moved on. You should too. Ethan laughed, a sound that didn't sound human. You don't move on from someone who showed you who you are. A week later, a package arrived at his door. No return address. Inside, the red scarf. The same one she wore the night they met. Folded perfectly, with a small note tucked inside. Asterisk, you said you wanted to fix things. But some things were never broken. You just didn't know how to hold them. Asterisk. No name. No would-be. Just that. He read it over and over until the words blurred. That night, Ethan took the elevator down to the street for the first time in months. No suit. No driver. Just him, walking, lost, among the people he never really saw before. He ended up in the South Side, where kids played ball under flickering lights, where laughter came easy even when money didn't. He saw her world and realized how far he'd always been from it. Weeks turned into months. Tasha was gone, but the story stayed. People still whispered her name, not with gossip now, but with something almost like respect. She walked away from a billionaire, they'd say. Didn't take a dime. Ethan read those lines too. Every time he did, it hurt and healed at once. Time don't heal everything. It just teaches you what pain you can live with. It had been 4 months. For months since the world forgot her name. But Ethan hadn't. He stepped down from his company quietly, citing mental health and personal reflection. The board called it crisis. He called it clarity. He sold his penthouse, packed a single duffel bag, and disappeared. Nobody knew where he went. But if you asked the driver who dropped him at the Greyhound station, he'd tell you. The billionaire looked like a man finally ready to be broke. He started in Macon, Georgia, small town, red dirt, slow air. Every diner he walked into, he asked the same thing. You know a woman named Tasha Green? Some shook their heads. Others said, honey, there's 100 Tashas down here. But he kept looking. He went through church bulletins, laundromats, community boards, every place the rich never thought to search. He learned how to blend in. No chauffeur, no assistance, just an old car, a worn map, and a name that meant something only to him. Everywhere he went, he found pieces of her. A waitress who said, yeah, I met a woman once who talked just like that. A church elder who said, she used to sing in our choir for a minute. Then she moved on, always one step behind, always too late. At night, he'd sleep in cheap motels, thinking about her laugh, about how she used to touch her wrist when she was nervous, about how he'd traded that for silence and a stock price. One night, he pulled over on a dirt road somewhere in Alabama, sat on the hood of his car, and looked up at a sky full of stars. You ever realize, he said softly to no one, the higher you go, the less you see? The wind didn't answer, but maybe that was the answer. Months later, he found her trail again, this time in a town outside Savannah. A small community center had a flyer on the door. Green Hope Shelter, founded by T. Green. His hands shook as he walked inside. A volunteer looked up and smiled. You here to donate? He nodded. In a way. He looked around. Pictures of smiling women and kids on the wall. A bright red scarf framed behind glass. Below it, a plaque read, in memory of those who loved quietly and lost loudly. He touched the glass. The world tilted again, the same way it had when she first smiled at him. She was gone, but she'd built something from the pain. Something he couldn't buy, couldn't fix, couldn't claim. Ethan stayed in that little town a few days, long enough for people to start whispering. The man in the expensive shoes who ate lunch at the shelter. The one who never smiled, but always left extra cash on the counter. On the third morning, the shelter director, a woman in her 60s, gray braids tied back, eyes sharp enough to see right through him, came to his table. You looking for Tasha Green? She asked. He froze, then nodded once. She told me somebody might come one day. Left this for him. She handed him a plain, white envelope. His name wasn't on it. Just 2 words in her handwriting, if he ever comes. He took it to a park nearby, sat under a pecan tree, the air heavy with the smell of summer and rain. His fingers trembled as he opened it. Inside was a single page, folded twice. The paper smelled faintly of her perfume, something soft, familiar, like memory itself. He started reading. Ethan, if you're reading this, I guess you finally stopped running the world long enough to find yourself. I don't hate you. I never did. I just learned that love can't grow in a place where you have to apologize for being seen. You said once that money makes you untouchable. Maybe it does. But I never wanted to touch your money. I wanted to touch your soul. The part of you that used to laugh without checking who was watching. I forgive you. Not because you asked, but because I need peace more than closure. I've been building something here. A place for women like me. The ones who get talked about but never listened to. The ones who clean up after dreams that ain't theirs. I hope you're happy, Ethan. Not rich. Not respected. Happy. Take care of that heart you kept locked away. I still believe there's good in it. Asterisk. Tasha. By the time he finished reading, the page was wet from his tears. He folded it back carefully, as if it might break. He didn't move for a long time. Just sat there, listening to the sound of kids laughing somewhere in the distance. The sound of life going on without him. He whispered, "You were right, Tasha. You always were." That night, he burned the letter's envelope in a motel ashtray, but kept the letter itself, pressed inside his journal like a scripture. 3 years later, Ethan Caldwell was no longer a headline. No Forbes covers. No TV interviews. The man who once ran an empire had learned how to live quietly. And finally, honestly, he spent those years pouring his fortune into something different. Not another app, not another skyscraper, but a foundation. He called it the Green Hope Project, a name that meant everything to him, and to the woman who once cleaned his floors and changed his heart. The foundation built housing for single mothers, funded scholarships for young women in underserved communities, and opened centers across the South where dignity wasn't a luxury, it was a right. The first Green Hope Center opened on a cloudy day in Atlanta. Ethan stood on a small stage, holding a folded speech he'd written 100 times but couldn't bring himself to read. "I built a lot of things in my life," he said quietly, "but this is the first thing that feels alive." The crowd clapped. Cameras flashed. But in the middle of it all, he saw her. A woman standing near the back, wearing a long beige coat, hair tucked under a headscarf, her hands folded just like Tasha used to. He froze mid-sentence. His throat locked. It couldn't be her. The woman smiled, small, knowing, almost teasing, then turned away. Before he could move, she was gone, slipping into the crowd like a shadow. Later that evening, when the guests had left and the lights dimmed, Ethan stood alone in the hallway, looking at a mural painted across the wall. Tasha's face, larger than life, warm, unguarded, real. Below it, a quote from her letter. Asterisk, "I still believe there's good in it." Asterisk. He smiled, but it wasn't the smile of a man who got what he wanted. It was the smile of a man who finally understood what love was meant to do. Break you open just enough to let the light in. He walked outside, past the cameras and the guards, down to the edge of the street where the rain had started to fall. He tilted his head up, letting it hit his face. A baptism of the man he used to be. "You did it, Tasha," he whispered. "You really did." He didn't know if she heard. But in that moment, under that soft Atlanta rain, it didn't matter. Because love, he realized, doesn't always end with a kiss. Sometimes it ends with purpose, with peace, with one man, standing in the rain, finally feeling something real. Love doesn't always save you. Sometimes it changes you. The richest people aren't the ones who have everything, but the ones who finally learn what to give.